Blake Lively not dropping her frivolous lawsuit against Justin Baldoni, and other pop culture news. You're live with the guy every day at 12 Central. I got my producer Nat on the mic.
Hello.
Okay, let's get right into it. Let's actually start with King of the Hill actor dies.
Yes, so Jonathan Joss, King of the Hill actor who voiced John Redcorn, and his life ended via shooting.
Yeah, so he got in a confrontation with his neighbor, actually, of all things. So this may be a word of warning when you're talking to somebody. Show respect as you want to get respect. I'm sorry to hear he lost his life. I primarily brought this article up to talk about King of the Hill, but let's read a little bit about what happened with the actor, actually.
Yes. Do you want me to read it?
Yeah.
So Jonathan Joss, an actor on King of the Hill who voiced John Redcorn, passed away in Boom Boom on Sunday. San Antonio police confirmed to Variety. He was 59. San Antonio officers were dispatched to a bad thing in progress at a home on Sunday night around 7 p.m. When they arrived at the scene, they found Joss near the road after he was boomed multiple times. The officers attempted life-saving measures until medics arrived, but Joss was pronounced his life had ended at the scene. The shooter fled in a vehicle but was detained by officers a block away and booked for ending someone's life. The investigation is still ongoing. TMZ, which broke the news, reported that Joss was boomed by a neighbor after a disagreement.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if alcohol was involved. Alcohol is typically involved with shootings like this and things like that, especially in the States. So,
well, I saw that his husband had posted that it was somebody, like the person who ended his life was somebody that was unhappy with his lifestyle. Let's just put it that way.
This guy was...
He was shot because he's gay.
This guy was gay? Mm-hmm. Oh. He looked like he didn't look gay. I thought he looked like a... Well,
that's what...
Terror.
That's what I read really quickly. I believe it was this morning. So I don't take it... I mean, take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah. Well, I mainly brought this actually to talk about King of the Hill. It got real political there for a second. But King of the Hill was really one of those shows at a time when there wasn't much about redneck culture or white culture. Everything was kind of going in a diverse direction. This went in the opposite direction. I also like when shows show certain different cultures, whether it's black culture or redneck culture or New York culture or Los Angeles culture, what's happening in mass media, especially in the United States. They really try to homogenize everything. So you'll really see accents and things like this become homogenized across the board on a national scale. So I really like when they delve into different some subcultures and things like this. Okay, let's go into Blake Lively, which was the headline story.
Yes, so Blake Lively insists she is not dropping emotional distress claims against Justin Baldoni, despite what his lawyers say, and her lawyers seem to have said.
Now, this is like, she needs to drop these charges. She needed to pull the Band-Aid off and drop them a long time ago and see if they can't work something out. This is ruining her reputation. It could bring her husband down with her. She's saying she has emotional distress. At this point, Justin Baldoni should have a counter lawsuit on top of his counter lawsuit for his emotional distress. This is crazy what this woman has done. I was a fan of Ryan Reynolds and in turn her because she was substantially related to Ryan Reynolds. But after this whole mess came out, I was never a fan of Justin Baldoni. So for me to take his side, things must have really gone awry for her and Ryan Reynolds.
Mm-hmm. Do you want me to go into the article?
Yeah.
So after some quiet time on the East Coast court docket front, once again, the battle royale between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni and the It Ends With Us director Inner Circle has become, as she said, they said in federal courts. Specifically, this time it has to do with the emotional distress claims that the Another Simple Favor actress has in her initially filed New York Eve lawsuit against her co-star director. Okay, hold on. Because they put a lot of...
And this could be part of her. She's just in a bubble constantly. They get what they want when they want. They're in a situation where I'm not sure they know how to read the tea leaves anymore. And this can typically happen with a lot of bigger stars. They think it's always going to work out in their favor. Life's a fairy tale. And that's just not the case here. They need to reach a settlement with Baldoni. It's going to cost them money, but at least they can salvage their careers and things like this from this. Mm-hmm. Now, what do you think about this case? I know when it first started out, you were definitely on Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively's side. I kept I'm a big fan of Candace, and I was watching a lot of Candace at the time. I kind of clued you into maybe it's not as it initially seemed. How do you feel now?
I mean, clearly, I believe kind of both sides are being ridiculous, but Justin Baldoni has been able to prove and release that website with all the sources and stuff.
So, okay. Let's go now we're going into the Karate Kid. This one will be quick because I think we've talked enough about the Karate Kid earlier this week, but let's see what Jackie Chan says.
So, Jackie Chan didn't train for Karate Kid Legends. I don't need to anymore. I've been training every day for 64 years.
And I think he's right about this one. He's been doing martial arts since he was a child. He's been doing acting his entire life. He really went through the trenches. He did all of his own stunts, produced a lot of his own movies. Of everybody that's in Hollywood, he is what you would call a blue-collar working actor. He came up by his bootstraps, and he is 64 years old. He's not going to get any better by practicing martial arts or practicing acting or anything else like that. That being said, he's training a lot less with martial arts and things. He's maybe coming to the realization he may be losing his physical capabilities and things like that. This came to a realization with me. My entire first half of my life was always based on physicality. I hadn't really invested much in, I'd say, a mental career or an activity that I would do without my physicality. I had always done construction, oil work, underground mining, you name it. If it was physical, I taught MMA, jiu-jitsu, things like this. After my back started going out, I realized, man, I should have invested a little bit more in other activities and stuff like this. Now I'm huge into production. When my back first started going out, I got into camera work, photography, and that led into YouTube and me doing this now. But it's a huge transition, and I was very unconfident. I'm still very unconfident every step of the way. I still gear myself much more towards the hands-on stuff with the cameras, whether it's lighting, grip, running cables, things like this. I hate editing. Nat's the one that I don't think she likes editing either.
I like editing.
You do. She's good. She's good at it. I mean, she's editing for 2 channels right now. So big props to Nat.
Thank you.
Okay. And she puts up with me constantly trying to keep her on a timeline.
That's the hardest bit.
Yesterday was pretty hard on you.
Yeah, just yesterday?
Well, yesterday especially, I think.
Every day.
Okay, let's go into the next story here.
So director Matt Shackman reveals which magical comics inspired the Fantastic Four first steps.
And I don't think anybody cares. It's a strange thing that's happening with Marvel now. They made a fairly decent movie with Thunderbolts, and it got good reviews on even Rotten Tomatoes. Generally, people that I know that went to go see it liked it, but there's such a backlash against Marvel and Disney now. Even when they make a good movie, people are not going to watch it. And it's actually starting to have an opposite rub, meaning people are caring less about the comics, less about the toys. The cancellation of the live action movies is having a reverse effect on comics and toys. And if people stop being interested in the comics in general, it doesn't matter if you come up with new IPs or new ideas based on the comics, because the entire IP is kind of getting burned at this point.
Yeah.
Why don't you read a little bit of the article, even though I think nobody cares about this story. And I know when I first read it, I said, nobody knows who this guy is, and people care even less about this Fantastic Four IP. They've burned this IP. It already has backlash on the new movie, which hasn't even come out. In the last 2 or 3 Fantastic Four iterations, people did not like. So trying to reboot something that people already didn't like, they had to do it really good, and the rumor mill is turning that they really didn't do it very well. This is the MCU, meaning they're putting the female characters forward as the heroes above the team. Okay, let's read about.
So the Fantastic Four First Steps is in great hands with director Matt Shackman. The filmmaker, who previously worked on WandaVision, Game of Thrones, and The Boys, recently revealed he drew inspiration for the upcoming MCU movie from a very specific comic series. Shackman discussed his love and admiration for Fantastic Four Solve Everything in a foreword for Marvel's premiere collection release. He likes comic books, essentially. The director wrote via Variety, Marvel's first family has been continuously cared for by the best and brightest the company had to offer. According to Shankman, Hickman's Fantastic Four Solve Everything is one of the greatest print depictions of Marvel's first family. The humor and heart I loved as a kid, it's there and better than ever. The messy family dynamics and that sense of optimism and wonder, I don't think the Fantastic Four have been quite as fantastic as they are in the pages of this book. And unfortunately, in that movie, it seems like they're going to focus a little bit too much on not enough character development, but too much character development on other things that fans usually don't really care about.
Yeah. So we'll wait to see when it comes out. But I think even if they manage to do rework, re-edits, and have a likable movie, people still aren't going to go watch this. The tea leaves are kind of being written right now. It happened with Thunderbolts. I think it's going to happen with this thing as well. Okay, let's go into Fortnite Star Wars crossover.
So Fortnite Star Wars crossover coincides with lowest player count in 2 years. And we kind of talked about this as well with James Earl Jones's voice being added or used.
Yeah, and there's the Darth Vader with James Earl Jones and the AI voice. Now, that being said, just like I kind of mentioned in the last story, the Marvel IPs have been burned at this point, and it's having a reverse effect on now the comics and the toys. Same thing is kind of happening here. Fortnite is a strong brand. It typically has a lot of online play, but they try to cross over Star Wars with it, thinking they would get even a larger audience, and the reverse is happening. Ultimately, I think crossing Star Wars over with this, because it is also a burned IP at this point, is having a bad rub on Fortnite, the game itself. So I'll keep an eye on if Star Wars can kind of turn it around. And there's rumors of making these George Lucas lost scripts that are R-rated, really adult-themed Star Wars. Ryan Reynolds also wants to make an R-rated adult-themed Star Wars. So there's pushes in this direction to make adult-oriented Star Wars that are R-rated, not just from George Lucas, but also from Ryan Reynolds. So whatever gets made, I think that is the direction they need to go in order to reset the IP. Okay, let's continue.
So also, hold on. Also from The Park Place, Anthony Weiner, Democrat convicted of sending inappropriate material to a child, applauded on Disney's The View, and this is coming from The Park Place. Yeah, and this is Disney ABC, and the fact that they gave him a glowing interview and they absolutely love this guy is kind of crazy. He was involved in CP and things of this nature. He was completely disgraced. He's been in the news a lot lately. The Democrats are really trying to rehab his career. At a certain point, you have to cut your losses and let him go. The issue I think you're having with a politician like this is he has dirt on people and people have dirt on him, meaning he can pull strings, ask for favors so he doesn't release information, and maybe they'll help him out. And they also have dirt on him. So once he's in a position of power, they're going to be able to pull the puppet strings. I'm surprised how much this guy's been in the news lately. I constantly combing the news all day, and surprisingly, they're really putting him forth as I wouldn't say a new figure in the Democratic Party, but I think people forgot about him because he kept such a low profile after the CP charges, and now he's trying to make a comeback. I think he's damaged goods, and they need to let him go. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's go into the Dollar General, I think was next. Was that right? I believe so, yes. So Dollar General posts record sales as bargain stores attract more people anxious about the economy. Yeah, and dollar stores, this is interesting because we had a dollar store by our house before we moved from Vancouver to Mexico City here. Mm-hmm. And dollar stores all around Canada were being shut down because of the amount of theft, drug addicts, and things that were going on in the store. They had like 5 security guards within that store constantly throwing people to the ground. They had to have 2 guys on the main door so people couldn't escape. They had to keep their back entrance locked. The amount of theft happening at that Dollar General was really hurting their bottom line. And it was making them hard to stay in business. So I don't know if it's different. It looks like it may be different in the United States, but a lot of the times these Dollar Generals also get expired goods or near expired goods and sell them at extreme discounted rate, which
people are really struggling right now in all Western countries. So I would expect the Dollar General to continue to do well. I just think in low income areas, there's a real sense of liability.
Mm-hmm. And then also, I mean, we saw a lot of fights even breaking
Oh,
out
there was a ton
there.
of fights in that thing.
And
this is right in downtown Vancouver.
Yeah, it's a very touristy part as well.
Next to the main SkyTrain, which is like the subway station in Vancouver.
Mm-hmm. Do you want me to read a little bit?
Yeah, why don't we read a little bit of it?
So
I'm going through the news kind of fast today.
Dollar General set a quarterly sales record of $10.44 billion and upgraded its annual profit and sales outlook as Americans tighten their budgets and spend more at bargain stores and off-price retailers amid economic uncertainty. The U.S. economy shrank 0.2 annual pace from January through March, the first drop in 3 years as President Donald Trump's trade wars dented spending by businesses. Consumer spending slowed sharply. And they're going to try to paint this once again on the tariffs.
Yeah, well, there was a ton of stories because I go through economic news for the morning, especially today was kind of a slow morning with pop culture news. So I knew I was going to have to add a little bit of politics, a little bit of economic news. I try to relate it to pop culture as much as possible. That being said, every story was just completely biased against Trump and his tariffs, and they're not even using hard evidence. They just say they feel like this should negatively impact the economy, not using hard data. What's actually happened with these tariffs so far, at least as far as internally within the United States, it really hasn't hurt the economy or the stock market. We were talking to a couple of economists the other day, and I was saying, well, yeah, when he announces big tariffs of 100%, the stock market goes down, but then he brings them back down to only 10% and it recovers to above what it was. And they were trying to tell me that's a bad thing. I said, well, no, it's a bad thing if you announce a 10% tariff right off the bat, the stock market crashes and never recovers. The reason that's a bad thing to liberals and progressives is because it's actually making Trump look like he knows what he's doing. He's been planning this move for 40 years. He's been hard on tariffs and talked about tariffs and planned how to protect the United States through tariffs for 40 years. One of his big interviews he did was with Oprah Winfrey in 1988, and they talked in depth about tariffs. But even 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years before that, I was able to find articles where Trump was generally talking about tariffs, but that Oprah interview is really the one people know him from. It's constantly clipped of one of the early times he did talk about tariffs for the United States. He was also always a China hawk and looked at China as competition, not necessarily as an ally.
Yes.
Okay, let's go into...
And this next one connects kind of to what we're talking about, but Campbell Company says, sales rise as more Americans cook meals at home. Don't cook with Campbell's soup. Oh, hold on. We don't know.
Well, you got to figure this is Dollar General is selling Campbell's soup by the fistful, I bet.
Yeah. And I mean, Campbell's soup and a lot of those canned processed stuff is not the best for you, but...
Okay, but I was also thinking about this, and we went out to buy some basic supplies, beans, rice, and we got a few canned goods and stuff like that. Our canned goods on the rise because you can preserve them in your house and things like that. Mm-hmm. So it's not just necessarily that people are cooking at home, because this isn't really cooking at home. If people are cooking at home,
heating up stuff.
It's heating up stuff. When people typically are cooking at home, they're making things for a couple of days, stuff like this, especially if you want to save money. I have a feeling that a lot of people are buying Campbell soup, so they just have minimal provisions in their house in case something goes wrong. There's a lot of hysteria and panic in the general media as of late, I would say over the last 12 months especially. And also before that, the jibby jab era really kind of woke people up. I remember trying to get toilet paper during that point. Mm-hmm. It was extremely hard in Canada.
Yes, well, everywhere, I believe. But
yeah.
Why was there ever an explanation? I'm sure I read it or saw it somewhere, an explanation as to why it was toilet paper that people were panic buying mostly?
Well, some people will kind of buy it in bulk at that point, and they go to the store to buy everything they can. Toilet paper and paper towel rolls when you go buy them, especially in bulk places like Costco, they come in rolls of like 40. So it takes up a lot of space on the truck. So you can't actually get so many units of toilet paper in a truck compared to if you're buying soups, you can fit tens of thousands in a single truck. So you have a few thousand people buying toilet paper, they're completely sold out. Where other products you can buy, you can fit a lot more on the truck so they don't sell out as quickly. And then other people start panicking, noticing, oh, there is no toilet paper. There's no stuff on the shelf. So as soon as it gets restocked, people start buying it up. So products that typically that are daily use that take up more room on the shelf because they can fit less in their in-store inventory will sell out quicker.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's go into Goodyear here.
Oh. So you...
And I thought because you were telling me the history of Goodyear before, weren't you?
Me?
Or was that the Michelin Man?
Neither.
You weren't telling me about the Michelin Man and then how it was, how they originally came up with that?
No, I mean, I know why the Michelin Guide was invented.
Oh, yeah, that was the thing.
Yes, so not Goodyear.
But
it has to do with tires.
It has to do with tires, though.
So the iconic Goodyear blimp is 100 to celebrate a flight over Ohio. The iconic Goodyear airships are taking a victory lap over the skies of an Ohio city this week.
And they originally came out of Ohio, so I think that's why they wanted to pay homage to their history. Mm-hmm. And this is really a good feeling story, and the fact that they're paying homage to their history, where they come from. Disney should really take a page out of their book, because they're getting rid of a lot of their historical rides, their historical IPs, stuff that harken back to a time when people actually loved Disney. Things that are connecting the parks to the original Walt Disney, they're also trying to shun and things like this. They should really be stepping in the opposite direction and leaning into all those things. Mm-hmm. Why don't we read a little bit out of the Goodyear story here?
Sure. So the iconic Goodyear airships are taking a victory lap. I already read that. The Akron-based tire company is celebrating the 100th anniversary of Pilgrim, its first blimp to take flight just outside of the city on June 3rd, 1925. Goodyear began experimenting with vessels that would be lighter than an aircraft in the early 1900s, and the dirigibles have since become a lasting iconic symbol of the corporate brand. For some, it evokes nostalgia, while for others, it offers a glimpse into a larger-than-life part of advertisement history. And I remember, didn't they used to burn up a bunch?
No, what happened, and I was just going to kind of get into that, is I watch a lot of documentaries, and blimps were touted as the future, and it was kind of like the Titanic. They built them bigger and bigger, and then they built the Hindenburg, and that thing.
Oh, it was a Hindenburg.
The Hindenburg. And the ship that could never fall out of the sky, just like the ship that could never sink. It dramatically burned up, and that was kind of the end of blimps and things of that nature. They were building like fine dining, fine restaurants on these blimps and stuff. They ended up becoming just more an advertising and marketing thing. After the Hindenburg burned up, nobody kind of wanted to go on these things anymore for luxury dinners and things like this.
Yes, and Rafa also says, hello, Rafa. And he also says, people in the U.S. hoarding the toilet paper was pretty ridiculous.
Did they hoard toilet paper here as well?
I was going to ask, Rafa, let us know in Mexico, because I mean, of course, I spoke to people I knew here and family and stuff, but I don't remember if they ever mentioned toilet paper. But in Canada, it was also crazy.
Oh, yeah.
We luckily, because it was interesting during those times that everybody was doing the whole 2 weeks to sow the spread, etc. And you kept saying this is going to be about 2 years. And everybody looked at you like you were being crazy. And so did I. But you said, let's go, because we had a Costco membership. So you said, let's go Costco kind of preemptively, a little bit before even I think people started rushing the store. So I think we were kind of able to stave it off for a little bit because you had some foresight saying this is going to be way longer than people expect.
When you're watching so much pop culture and politics, you kind of have this ability to predict the future somewhat. You can see things coming. You can kind of prepare for them. And this is on a lot of different aspects. I kind of seen what was happening with technology a good 5 to 10 years before it actually happened with technology. So I was able to build this small YouTube production company that took about 5 years to kind of save up and work for.
Yeah.
But what my thought process was technology is going to stagnate over the next few years. And even though if they come out with new technology, it's going to be so minute in the iterations. It's a good time to invest in it now, because when I actually first started to invest in different technology for the production companies, such as cameras and switcher boards and things like this, every single year, the technological jump was so big that last year's model was almost obsolete at that point, and people were really angry, and that's why they weren't buying technology. I seen that technology was actually starting to stagnate at that point, and I was completely correct, because I bought all this stuff I stopped building the production company maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and it took 5 years to build it, and all the technology is still good.
And they haven't really released any
big
updates on stuff.
They've released new models of all the stuff I have, like the switcher board, and it's such a minute jump. People are actually buying the one that I still have because it's cheaper now. It's not much cheaper. It actually maintained its value fairly well because the new model doesn't do anything else. It supports SDI, but most cameras don't support SDI that you're using for home filming and stuff like this.
And Rafa says, he replied. So he says, no, we didn't have that problem. Only alcohol was scarcing.
In Canada, it was the opposite. Alcohol was all over the place because they shut down churches. They shut down restaurants. They shut down everything else.
Parks.
They shut down parks, beaches, and churches, yet they opened all the bars.
And the liquor
stores.
Because in Canada, you can't, well, in Vancouver, in other parts of Canada, you can. But in Vancouver, you can't buy alcohol at the grocery store. So they made sure to retain all BC liquor and all the other liquor stores open during that time.
Well, and they said it was a medical necessity because people needed their alcohol and they would die and have
because of
shakes
addiction
otherwise.
issues, yeah.
Which is crazy.
It is.
If you're going to open bars and liquor stores, but you're going to shut churches, you have to open churches. And they didn't just shut down churches. They had a hard line on churches, and they were like, if you opened your church, which a few did, they came after you and hit you with hundreds of thousands of dollars of fines to the point you wouldn't be able to pay it, and you would actually have to shut down the church. There was a major attack on Christianity during the era of the Jibby Jab in Canada.
And Chris, I remember one of the pastors or one of the people that opened their church was Chris Pavlovsky. I remember Rebel News really tried to help him and went to interview him, and were showcasing how insane that was.
Oh, well, it was absolutely.
And then the church burning started.
Okay, what do we got next year?
Hold on.
And this one is actually pretty good. There's 2 stories in a row here. And let's go into the first one first. I think that's the second story you have there.
Oh, yes, because you no.
Yeah, the first story should be economic recession.
So hold on. Now I have to look for it. There we go.
Okay, let's actually, if we can, we'll play the video with this. And this guy is actually really good. He talks really animated and really funny, but he has some of the best information about Canada all the time.
So this is coming from Mark Nixon, and just play it?
Yeah, just play it.
Sure. Oh, wait, they don't have sound. Okay.
We just got some new data. The biggest story in 2025, and our mainstream media is non-existent. They're not covering the story whatsoever. It's Canada's immigration plan. Imagine this. 16 fully loaded to the brim 747 jetliners landing in Canada every single day. Each jetliner has 416 people. And guess what? All of them have one-way tickets. And if for some reason there's a day off, that means a fully loaded 747 jetliner is landing in Canada every 45 minutes in this country.
Pause it for a sec.
And they're all...
And this is every single day these jetliners are coming in filled with immigrants that the Canadian government is shipping in, and they have one-way tickets, which is crazy.
Yes.
This is absolutely insane. And we're going to go a little bit into this a little bit more in depth today. And we're going to talk about immigration, how it's not only hurting the countries that are taking the immigrants, but it's dramatically affecting the places where they're taking these immigrants from. Because it's not only a brain drain, meaning they're not only taking the smartest and the brightest, they're assimilating their women, and they're taking their women out of these cultures. So that's going to affect their ability to reproduce. And they're taking their hardest working and really their working age or military age men that would do the construction jobs and really help build the country from the ground up.
The problem is that those opportunities aren't the same in Canada versus some of the places where.
Well, no, I definitely agree that the opportunities in Canada, or maybe not Canada, but the United States, might be better for these people. But if they were left in their own country, the kind of people that are going to Canada and the United States are typically the ones that would take your hardest working jobs. They would take your most intelligent jobs that you need degrees and things like that for. They would be the kind of people that would actually start their own business. If somebody's willing to leave their own country, they're definitely the kind of risk taker that would start their own business. And although they would make less money and they wouldn't be as successful within the country, over time, it would build up the country. But we're seeing generation after generation after generation being emptied out of these other countries. So how do you expect these other countries to ever really get ahead when you're taking their best and their brightest?
And the issue here is that when they go to Canada, I'm singling out Canada, they don't get the opportunities they were promised.
No.
I include myself in that.
And most of them, I'm not so sure about the United States as much as Canada. I know Canada very well because before I left Canada, I was forced into very low-paying jobs, minimum wage jobs. I had 4 of them. I was working with complete immigrant staffs. I was very often the only white person working at some of my jobs. For instance, I worked at the art gallery. That was probably 90% of the people were from India. So I got to know those people very well and ask them, and they were all trying to get back to India. They felt like they were sold a lie in Canada. Most of these people actually owned houses in India. The fact when they wanted to immigrate to Canada, they had to save money in order to do that. So they already had a skill base where they could earn a certain amount of money in India. From that skill base, they had usually already bought in a house. Then they saved after that to immigrate to Canada. Now they've completely emptied their savings. They're stuck in Canada and they can't get back to what they actually want to do.
Essentially, that was my story. I mean, I studied in Canada. I thought I was going to stay there for the longest time, and it just never materialized. And the country kept worsening and worsening to the point where I said, Canada is worse for me, and it looks worse off as a future for me than going back to Mexico.
Yeah.
And we did.
And it was very interesting to talk to these especially most of the people that I worked with were all Indian, but man, their political views, they were very quiet, and they would like support the liberals if you would have a tangential conversation. But I'm very traditional or conservative in my views, and I'm not scared to express them. And I would express them when we get in conversations. And lo and behold, they actually hold traditional conservative views, but they're scared to express those within Canada. Mm-hmm. And why? Because those are the traditional values of their culture. Is religion, is having a family, is working hard, trying to make your own business. One thing that most, especially male immigrants from India, were very surprised about Canada was running your own business. You can't do it within Canada. And if you do, Canada's going to take all of your money for it. So most of those people that were stuck in Canada either wanted to go home or wanted to get into the United States so they can start their own businesses. Mm-hmm. That was, most Indians are actually very entrepreneurial and want to start their own business, at least the people that I worked with.
Yeah. And then they realize it's impossible.
Oh, yeah.
And getting a home is impossible. And they have to bring in more family members.
Having a family is impossible.
Yes.
Like, it's crazy. Okay, let's finish Mark Nixon's tangent on here.
One way. And it gets even more insane. Our federal government is financially helping these people move here, travel expenses, and settlements. They're settling here. And they're providing these individuals with a 0% loan of up to $40,000. I don't know what Canadian gets a loan that's 0% interest, but this is the reality. So isn't that fantastic? The second that these new people come to Canada, they become immediately debt slaves to the system. Most of these people
Okay.
are coming to.
And let's talk a little bit about this because they're offering him, yes, a $40,000 loan, but they're also giving him $80,000 a year tax free for food and board while they're there, which is absolutely crazy because $80,000 in Canada, if it was taxed, would be the equivalent of $160,000.
Was that only for asylum seekers and refugees or for all immigrants? Because I didn't get
that. I didn't know.
I didn't get that.
Yeah, but you also have to apply for a lot of these programs, and I think it was refugees and asylum seekers.
Yes.
But even then, like that.
And the vetting process for that is not, up to par.
Yeah, and we've been talking a lot about the UK, especially because Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of the UK, has been running his mouth on how he's stopping immigration, how he's against immigration, when for the past 10 years he's been all for it, and he's the one that's instituted these mass immigration laws that really help and facilitate the immigration into the UK. And the other day when he says it's over, we're no longer experimenting with the population, they have the biggest influx of immigrants for a single day, the day he announced that, which is crazy. He has no actual will to want to stop it. He just wants to say he is. So if they're controlling the media, that people might vote for him and listen to his lies. The exact same thing is happening to Mark Carney in Canada. He's saying they're going to stop immigration, yet it's every 45 minutes there's a jet filled with immigrants that are really hurting the Canadian workers' jobs. And let's go into the next article, which is
and they're
jobs.
getting their dreams also shattered.
Oh yeah.
By Canada telling them there's an opportunity where there's nothing.
And this has been a big issue in Canada is summer jobs because it's now summertime within Canada and teenagers are saying they can't find jobs. They're blaming it on the tariffs. This has absolutely nothing to do with tariffs. This has been an issue for the past 5 years now that I can remember. There are no jobs for teenagers. I remember all the places I used to work. We used to have a huge influx every summer of teenage jobs. That's no longer the case. Every place you would have, what do you call it? Where you come in with no training?
Internship?
Yeah, not an internship.
Training position?
No, where you go into a job like Tim Hortons, entry-level position. Where any job where you would have an entry-level position and you need no work history, they're completely taken by immigrants. The reason they're taken by immigrants is the Canadian government has a job placement program where they ship these immigrants in and then they place them in places like Tim Hortons or where you need no work experience. And then they subsidize their pay directly to the company in the form of a 30% tax break. So it's 30% cheaper for all these businesses to hire immigrant workers. Okay, let's read some of the article here.
So U.S. tariffs and a growing population to blame for a lack of summer jobs for youth, expert says. High school students say finding a job for the summer can be challenging without prior experience. It's interesting the photos they used of this Canadian teenagers and the population that's unable to find jobs, but I'll just leave that there. So summer is here, and for many high school students, that means it's time to lock down a summer job. DeMarco Brown is grade 11 student from Kitchener-Waterloo Collegiate. He's eager to work, but that attitude hasn't landed him a job. It's really hard, to be honest. I applied to like 20 jobs over the last year, and I got one reply, and it was a rejection, he said, adding that he wishes he had more family connections. It's hard unless you know someone that works in the business. I think it would be easy if you knew someone that works at the place, but other than that, you just have to keep on calling back and have to beg for attention. Timothy Lang is the president and CEO of the job placement agency, Youth Employment Services. He says high school students are facing a tough job market
Well, also because immigrants are permanent long-term workers that you never have to give raises to. These high school students are just coming for the summer, then they're going to leave. So if you have the choice between a student and an immigrant worker who the government's going to pay 30% of their wage directly to you as a business, you're far more likely to hire immigrant workers. And this has become an industry. What are you looking at?
Something moved.
Oh, that's okay. Okay, let's move on to the next story here.
Well, I was going to say, with their parents, for example, because I'm guessing their parents are immigrants, or at least their grandparents are, I wonder what they think now of these opportunities they were promised in Canada for their children, etc., now that they're actually living through the mess that they're in.
Well, I also wanted to kind of go into this because I do have the statistics here with Canadian immigration. Last year, they let in over 1 million immigrants. Mark Carney said he's going to shut that down. They're on track for 2 million this year. That's a doubling, not a shutting down. So in the first 4 months of immigration within Canada, they have let in 817,000 immigrants, 491 foreign workers with permits. And there is a current unemployment of 1.5 million in Canada, I believe. Why don't you go to Mark Nixon's post there, it should say.
Oh, hold on.
I
lost it.
Yeah, it's right at the top there. Never mind. Okay, so there's approximately 1.6 or 1.5 million Canadians out of work for over a year or more, and you're currently trying to import foreign workers who are the Canadian government's paying their salary. Why don't they stop importing foreign workers? And then they're going to say, well, the Canadians aren't qualified for these jobs. A lot of these are entry-level jobs, number one, and number two, a lot of these companies and jobs are very specific, meaning you could easily train somebody up. If a job's multifunctional, maybe you need a baseline knowledge, but most companies would be able to train people up, especially if there was a tax incentive for them to do so with Canadian citizens.
And I was going to say, with this, those immigrants that are taking the entry-level positions, and we were just basically touching on that, are usually more highly skilled and trained, but they also can't get those positions. Like there's doctors driving Ubers and cabs, and there's lawyers that can't get their law degrees to be useful in Canada, and then they're just taking up also entry-level jobs. It's just a domino effect is what I'm trying to say.
It's not only, and the way Canada is doing this, they're completely manipulating the statistics. They're paying $81,000 a year for refugees to be in the country. None of that is calculated towards the appropriate statistics, meaning that when they calculate people that are coming into the country, they say it's a net benefit for GDP. If statistics were actually not manipulated and calculated properly, you would see there's so many negative effects that it's just not worth it. And the government would have to take a long, hard look at how they have the country structured. And if they stop manipulating statistics, the Canadian government would be looked upon as a complete failure. They're trying to cover up their own mess by the same thing they did with the jibby jab era. They're manipulating statistics and science and said, this is the science, we are the truth. It's not, and people are starting to finally feel it on the ground level with the price of groceries, with the ability not to find jobs or even entry-level jobs that would normally be below them. They can't even find those now. There's a lot of stories coming out of Canada with these huge lines for jobs at Tim Hortons or these entry-level jobs nobody would normally take. Mm-hmm. People are desperate for work in Canada, and the government's only making it worse by bringing more and more immigrants into the country.
Yes, and Rafa says, and it's funny because we already did this story, but he brings in a bit more context as well. He says, newsflash, seems like a gay Native American actor his life was ended in a feud with a neighbor. The LGBT community will go crazy over that.
That was our headline story. The first story we led off with. I didn't know a lot about it. I actually covered it because it was King of the Hill, and I used to watch that. It's like an adult-oriented cartoon, I guess. It was on at nighttime, and it kind of showed redneck culture in the States when redneck culture wasn't very popular. So I actually liked the show. I didn't know the ins and outs of this thing, and then you started reading the article, and I was like, oh shit, this is our headline article. Maybe we shouldn't be leading off with this. So we kind of transitioned to Blake Lively. But yeah, you're absolutely right. This story popped up for me as well today.
Yes, and maybe, but I think since it was a neighbor and it was I'm guessing there's a bit more context that either people are going to find or the media is going to try to hide. So I'll wait till tonight's show and maybe discuss
Yeah,
it
and we
after.
do have to realize there's all these specialty laws for women. If you end up, if something bad happens to a woman or something bad happens to the LGBTQ community, it's classified as a hate crime, as that was the actual intention. When you could easily switched him with somebody else, and maybe the same thing would have happened because alcohol was involved or something like that. Or you could easily switch the woman out with somebody else. And having specialty laws that are for just LGBTQ, so you're prosecuted more firmly, or you're prosecuted more firmly because it's a hate crime to do a crime against a woman, is a little bit ridiculous. We need even implementation of the law across the board, and the majority of violent crimes, things like this, happen against men. So I don't know why they're not having specialty laws for men if that's what they want to make.
Yes, fair and impartial justice. But so here it says, if we scroll down a bit more, in a statement on Joss's Facebook page, the actor's husband, Tristan Kern de Gonzalez, alleged that he and Joss were targets of homophobic harassment and that their house burned down after 2 years of threats from people in the area who repeatedly told us they would set it on fire. I'm wondering why they didn't move. I mean, I'm guessing there's some royalties coming in. De Gonzalez wrote that his life was ended by someone who could not stand the sight of two men loving each other.
Why weren't they living within their community?
That's why I said, why didn't they move?
Well, because number one, they must have been having such an outward lifestyle, so flamboyant with it that neighbors actually noticed,
and they were already uncomfortable by they themselves.
Yeah, so either live in the community or live in a different place. This is San Antonio, so you could expect some backlash against them. I don't know.
But San Antonio's pretty open. I mean, cities, even in red states, are pretty open. And it's his husband said, my husband, Jonathan Joss, and I were involved in a boom boom while checking the mail at the site of our former home. That home was burned down after 2 years of threats from people in the area who repeatedly told us they would set it on fire. We reported these threats to law enforcement multiple times and nothing was done. They could have moved, De Gonzalez wrote. Throughout the time that we were harassed regularly by individuals who made it clear they did not accept our relationship, much of the harassment was openly homophobic. When we returned to the site to check our mail, we discovered the skull of one of our dogs and its harness placed in clear view. This caused both of us severe emotional distress. We began yelling and crying in response to the pain of what we saw while we were doing.
And also, he's
it's very.
This is a one-sided. I would like to have both sides of the story.
Yes,
and this is also coming from Variety. So, I'm
and the police
cautious to even some of the stories we've done in the past. I am very cautious to say, but then when more information comes out, I kind of recover the story. That's why I do a lot of the same stories over and over, because new information comes out. And a lot of the time I was wrong in my initial assumption, but
yeah. And it says the San Antonio Police Department is investigating Joss's ending of his life, but said in a statement that currently there is no evidence to indicate Mr. Joss's ending of his life was related to his sexual orientation. So even the police is saying it had nothing to do with it.
Oh, yeah.
So it could have been a neighborly dispute. How long did they know each other? Why did they stay there? There's too many questions but I'm sure the actors and the actor community and the alphabet community is going to take this and run with it. And usually when they do that and more stuff comes out, they drop it like a hot potato. Once, if it comes out that they were also involved in it or there was more backstory to it, they're gonna stop talking about it immediately. And it's happened before.
Okay, maybe let's talk about my movie recommendation of the day. Classic 80s and 90s movies that people may not have saw. My last movie that I recommended was Rambo First Blood. It was much better than all the other Rambos. So if you've seen a Rambo, but you haven't seen Rambo First Blood because it's a little bit dated of a movie, the script was 10 times better. It was actually based upon a novel. The character development was spectacular in that first Rambo movie. The one I'm going to kind of recommend today involves Sylvester Stallone again. I grew up on Sylvester Stallone, and the 80s he was just good movie after good movie. This was one of the best buddy action movies that existed in the 80s, and that was Tango and Cash. So this was Kurt Russell and Sylvester Stallone. And here it is. But it was a kind of
looking for it. Hold on, keep talking.
Buddy cop criminal movie. Very good. I highly recommend it. If you haven't seen it, go see it. And yeah, I guess that's it for today.
Well, I was trying to bring it up, but
oh yeah, you go ahead and bring it up here.
Do just started going.
And it is from the 80s, so it is going to look a little bit dated, but man, there was a lot of good action movies in the 80s, and this was definitely one of them. Both these actors were big at the time and became only bigger after. This was probably at the pinnacle of their careers when they made this.
There's two of LA Top's rival cops are going to have to work together. So
Yeah.
it sounds like
And they have to escape from jail, a bunch of other things. So it was a very good movie. Maybe I'll talk a little bit about some production, because I'm going to try to add that in a little bit more. I'm trying to move away from politics in the afternoon show, add that more at night. So I figured maybe I'll start talking production equipment, pop culture with a little bit of politics. Today, maybe we'll talk audio. We talked audio before, but let's talk about this microphone that I have here. And if you're trying to start a podcast or something, you're really going to want a microphone similar to this. Now, a lot of microphones will look similar. They all kind of look the same, but the sound pickup pattern is much different. So with this particular microphone, maybe I'll take the head off of the microphone. And this is a very cheap microphone. I think it was like $90 Canadian. Compared to other mics, like you'll see the Shure SN7B. That's what the standard is supposed to be. You need a lot of all different audio interfaces and things that can pump electricity into the mic. So a lot of people have minimal setups. They buy that Shure SM7B and they get crappy sound out of it because they don't have all the extras that are supposed to go with that mic.
And I think that one, Joe Rogan popularized it, so that's why everybody got that one.
Yeah, there's a lot of problems.
You need to know audio
with
engineering to actually be able to use it.
Yeah, you need to know audio engineering fairly well with that mic. And I had sold one of my old audio interfaces boxes to this young kid. And he's like, oh, I got 5 Shure SM7Bs, which are like $500 mics a pop. And he called me. He's like, they're static. There's this and that. I'm like, your cables are crossed. But the fact that he didn't know what he was doing and he started with those mics, he was only giving himself more of a headache. Mm-hmm. Something like this is fantastic. I have the newer version of this, which is even better. This one has an aux cable that goes into it here, and I have to put it into a box. The new one has the aux cable and a USB cable, so you can plug it directly into your computer. So
that's the one we have on another set. Right?
And yeah, it's currently on the other set over there. But the great thing about these mics is the sound pickup pattern is only when I talk directly into the mic. So if somebody's over here talking, it's not going to pick up their voice, or if it does, it's going to be very minimal.
And I think you haven't said what.
If I put this over here, people won't hear me as much. But when I'm here, it picks me up good.
Yeah, I haven't said what mic it is.
Oh, this is the Rode Podcaster Pro.
Pod mic.
Oh, sorry, the Rode Pod mic.
Yes.
That being said, why is it important when you talk directly into the mic, it picks you up, but when you're to the side, it doesn't pick you up? It's if there's two people talking, say if me and Nat are here, if the pickup pattern is all around, like some of our other mics are, you're going to have an echo when you talk. Mm-hmm. So when she talks, it's going to echo into my mic and it's going to sound really strange, and you're going to be like, something's wrong with my audio, but it's actually the fact that you have the wrong microphone is now creating an echo. There's a lot of things that can create echoes and audio interference, but that is one of the major things people don't really know. And cheaper mics, a lot of mics have pickup patterns that are all around the mic rather than just directional.
Mm-hmm. So, and a lot of people buy, like, there's a lot of very cheap Amazon mics, like $30, $40, but they'll end up being more of a headache. They'll end up breaking more, and you'll have to replace them sooner. So you end up spending about $90 anyways, because you have to replace them, or the audio is not as crisp or as perfect as you want it to, or it picks up on plosives, which, I mean, these usually do, but less so.
Well,
and
you add one of these, it helps out tremendously.
Yes, a windshield. Not a windshield. I forgot the name.
A pop filter.
A pop filter. Thank you. A windshield.
You're a windshield.
But, and one of the most important things is also you can have beautiful imaging, like it can look great. Your lighting can be perfect. Your set might be super interesting, but if your audio doesn't work properly, nobody's going to listen to you. The number one thing for video is actually audio, because if your audio doesn't work, then nobody's going to want to listen to you, and it'll become very hard to watch something where the audio doesn't work. If you film on a potato, but you have a very good microphone, people are way more likely to, watch.
Well, yeah. And another thing I was going to say was, if you're having audio issues, check your cabling. Like I said, I had sold one of, what did I sell to that kid? Oh, one of my audio interface boxes. And he called me back and he's like, something's wrong. And it was overlapping cabling. When you overlap your cabling with your audio, you can get a hiss, you can get a buzz, you can get stuff that you don't even notice until you turn it all the way up. For instance, on our other show, I turned it all the way up just to check the audio, and it's the first time I did it in a month, and I noticed every single episode had a slight buzz or a hiss. So I reworked all the cabling, and that buzz and the hiss was gone. Same thing with the audio interface I sold to that other gentleman. I told him, check the cabling, uncross it, and it fixed it almost instantaneously. Especially when you're trying to hide a lot of the cabling, you're just shoving it around, shoving it up into desks, and the cabling will very often cross. So it's hard to get good cable management and not have your cables cross. So I would say cable management and a good directional microphone are the most important things. Because we almost all do interview format, talking head, directional mics are very important. We do have one mic that's not directional, and that's the one we take for when we do outdoor interviews.
Yes.
And I would recommend having an omnidirectional microphone. On our next episode, maybe I'll review that microphone and talk a little bit about that.
Yes.
That microphone is by far the best microphone we have for outdoor interviews at protests and stuff.
Because we were using those little dinky ones from Rode as well, and from DJI, the ones that everybody uses, that you see them clipping onto their shirts when they do like
like wireless lav mics or wireless mics here, and there's just so many things that go wrong with those little mics. You get home, they'll work 60-70% of the time, but then there's a large portion where something went wrong.
Yes.
That other mic that we'll review on the next show works every single time.
Yeah.
It was phenomenal.
Yes. And
the only thing, it didn't work when we were short on mics when we first moved to Mexico.
Yeah.
So we tried to use that microphone for both of us. But if you use it indoors in a closed room, it does have a lot of echo and boom. That's why you need these kind of mics for indoor talking head.
Yeah. And Rafa says, Rafa says, if you have audio issues, check that you are not using Nat's laptop microphone. Which has happened on several occasions.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, if you're using
the reason we were late today is
nothing worked.
Something was wrong with some of the cable. It took me like 30 minutes, and I was like, we're not doing a show today. I get pissed.
Yes, he gets very angry
because I spent so much.
He's the one that does all the pre-production and all the hooking up stuff.
Well, and I spent a lot of time. I expect to just flick things on and for it to work. And this particular set here, I'm constantly having to replug in mics for the computer to read it and stuff. But.
Yes. And again, like we did work in like film and the film industry, but in a very specific area. So we're still learning how to do all of this. And we're kind of wanting to take people on the journey as well, because I feel like it would have helped me to watch the people I usually watch do this same stuff. Like show me what goes wrong, what happens, etc. But I think a lot of people try to be too perfect, and I think I'd put us in that category as well. But I think it's valuable for people to see that you're not perfect and that mistakes happen all the time.
No, and work with what you have. Like cell phones are often the best cameras, and
microphones sometimes.
When you're first starting out, it's mainly the ability to talk on camera, not stutter, not say ah. And I know it's funny coming from me because I still do all these things.
And from me, I say estem like 1,000 times in Spanish.
But if you get two cheap mics like this, you can do a podcast without the visual first. It takes a lot of the pressure off, and then you can actually focus on listening to yourself back. Because if you try to do a podcast that's audio visual, you're going to constantly be looking at the visuals, fixing that, and you might not even pay attention to the audio, and that's actually the most important part. Mm-hmm. And then your acting ability, or your ability to say what you want to say and convey it concisely, how I still don't do very well. There's one more thing I wanted to say, and well, I can't think about it. So.
So Rafa says you should try uploading to Spotify podcast. The thing is, I've always tried to not say that these are podcasts.
I keep
these
telling
are
you they are podcasts, and you.
But I feel like podcasts are people sitting across from each other talking about X topic, not the news, pop culture focus that we try to. Okay, fine. Because in Spanish, what I try to do, and also in English, but mostly in Spanish, what I try to do is mix my interests on the social and cultural, like battle and stuff that's happening, and like the more, I would say, high concepts, like what does woke mean? Why is feminism not good? And then try to fuse it with a current news story of a celebrity, because that's the only way people are going to watch it. I tried doing just the like long form explanation videos, but those are honestly boring. So, but I don't know if I'd call that a podcast.
Also, like things will slowly change over time. Like, so like if I'm going to continue to do podcasts on a daily basis, shows I don't want to cover the same information. So what I was noticing is I was doing a lot of the same pop culture stories and news in the morning as at night. That's why I'm trying to separate it a little bit more, pop culture in the morning, news at night. But if it's a slow pop culture day, I'm like, I'm not having a lot to talk about. So then I'm going to have a lot of repeatability. That's why I'm trying to bring in maybe a little bit of production equipment, a production talk. Also, a lot of my edited videos, I'm comfortable talking about cameras, lenses, audio stuff. So some of my first edited videos may be best to go in that direction. So
on how to start your own thing?
Yeah, or just advice that I ran into, because my back, like I said, my back was going out. I knew I wasn't going to be able to work, and I had to make a career change. I figured I had 2 or 3 years. I ended up having about 4 years before I couldn't work a lot of my old physical jobs. And it took me about 4 years to buy all the equipment, but I started with all the equipment and then I learned to use it, which is the opposite of what most people did. But I felt a lot of pressure, because if I wasn't going to be able to work in a few years, I wasn't going to be able to buy the things that I needed to transition to a new career.
Yeah. And Rafa also says, yes, those mistakes also add a lot of comedic value, especially when people remember them so well, Rafa.
Okay, well, I guess we're done for today. Thanks for tuning in, and please like and subscribe. We got 95 subscribers. We're just about to 100. It would be a big help if we got those final 5.
Yes, and we're also, I keep trying to showcase that one video I made on Pedro Pascal in English that I brought in from my Spanish channel, because I think more people need to know about that. Yeah. So if you like it, if you find it interesting, please share it around so someone might see it and pick it up. But have a good rest of your day. We'll see you I'll see you in Spanish at 8 p.m. Central Time, and then we'll see you together at 9:15 Central Time in English in this channel. Adios. Thank you, Rafa. Thank you, everybody else.